Operators in Java are same as the operators which we have in the general mathematics. Right? So if you've got an expression 2 plus 3, plus is nothing but an operator there, and 2 and 3 are operands. Right? So an operator actually performs a particular operation on the operands to which it's applied on. Okay. So we've got all these different types of operators in Java. So we've got the list out here. We'll just be discussing briefly on the different type of operators we have. Since this not that important, or at least you know what these are about, we won't be wasting much time on this. So okay, I've put all these in a table, all the operator sets in a table, where the first column would be the operator, and the second column will be the description, and the third column will be a simple example. Right. So the first thing we have is assignment operator, which is an equal to, and this is how you give an assignment to an integer. Int I is equal to 10. So that's how you assign a value to an integer. So next we've got the arithmetic operators. They are the general addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and remainder operators. And the examples there are pretty simple and clear. The next set is the unary operators. So you see here the first two operators here are again the general plus and minus, which actually determines whether the value of a number is positive or negative. Right? So plus 1 and minus 1. And next two we've got plus plus and minus minus. That's nothing but increment and decrement operators. So this is something different. Right? So what does it mean? When you apply plus plus operator, increment operator actually increments the value, and when you apply the decrement value, it decrements the value. So by how much is it going to increment or decrement? So a plus plus would actually increment the value by 1, and a minus minus would decrement the value by 1. So here in the example we have int j is equal to I plus plus. So it's going to increment the value of I with 1, right? So after this statement, the value of I will, say for example the value of I is 4, then after this statement the value of I will equal 5. So we have I plus plus here, and similarly we can also have plus plus I. So what's the difference between I plus plus and plus plus I? There is one small difference between them. So if in this example, say value of I is 4 previously, right, and you assign the value of j to I plus plus. So when you say I plus plus, it actually first assigns the value of I to j, and then it increments the value of I. So the value of j is also going to be 4, right, after the statement. But in the case of plus plus I, it's first going to increment the value of I, and then it's going to assign the value of I to j. So in the other case, the value of j is going to be 5 and not 4. Right? So that's the difference between I plus plus and plus plus I. So similarly, we've got decrement operator, and we can also have I minus minus and minus minus I there as well. The logical not operator, it actually negates the value, so not of true is false and not of false is true. The next is equality operators, pretty straightforward. Equals, and it this checks for non-equality, right, and it either returns true or false. The relational operators checks for greater than, less than conditions, right, and these also returns true or false. Conditional operators, basically it combines, it operates on two conditions. So if I say a is equal to 4, it's going to return a boolean, right, true or false, and b equal to 5, equality operation will also return a boolean. So it's going to check for these two conditions, and only if both the conditions are true, it's going to return true, and if either one of the condition is false, it's going to return false. Similarly, the OR operator is going to return true if either one of the conditions is true, right, and if both the conditions are false, is going to return a false. Instance of operator. So there's something new here just for Java. Right? So the instance of operator is going to check if a particular reference is an instance of a particular class. Right? So you create a reference variable John, which actually refers to an object of type person, right? And and when you say John instance of person, you're going to get true, right? So this basically returns true or false again. So if you try to say uh, you create a employee class, right? You have two classes, person class and employee class in your application, and John is actually an instance of person. If you try to say John instance of employee, you're going to get false, because John is not really of type employee, right? It's of type person. Bitwise operators. So basically, when if any when you talk about bitwise, and if both the bits are true, then you're going to get a value of 1, else it's going to return 0. Similarly, bitwise or, if either one of the bits are 1, it's going to return a 1. If not, it's going to return a 0. Bitwise XOR, if both the values are 0 or both the bits are 1, it's going to return a 0, else it's going to return a 1, and reverse it actually negates. Okay. So there is one difference between the bitwise and an OR operators and the logical and an OR operator. So what's the difference? So say for example, in place of the bitwise AND operator, I've just put, in place of the logical AND operator, I just put bitwise AND operator here. So what would happen? So the difference would be where the first condition itself fails. So say for example, the first condition itself fails if value of a is 5 and 5 is equal to 4 is false. It is not going to consider the second condition at all in when you use logical OR operator, logical AND operator, right? And it's simply going to return false. But if you are using bitwise AND operator, even though the first condition is false, it's going to compute the second condition and return result. Similarly, when you use the logical OR operator, if the first condition is true, it's not even going to look at the second condition and simply return true. Whereas if you use if you use the bitwise OR operator, it's still going to compute the second condition irrespective of the result of the first condition. So that's the difference between bitwise and OR operators and the logical AND OR operators. In that way, the logical operators are a better solution, right? So you got to prefer that instead of bitwise and OR operators. Shift operators. Now, what does it do? So basically, as the name suggests, it shifts. So this is a right shift and this is a left shift uh, operator. The first one is a right shift and the second one is a left shift. So the right shift operator basically shifts the shifts the number of bits, shifts the value by the number of bits, right? So say for example, I'm doing 4 and I'm trying to right shift 1. I say 4 right shift 1. So what does that mean? It says that right shift 1 bits, right, to the right, shift 1 bit to the right. So the binary representation of 4 will be 100. So when I shift 1 bit right, it's going to replace by 0, right? So it's going to say 0 1 0. So the 1 here in the third position is going to come to the second position, right? So it becomes 0 1 0. That's equal to 2. Right? Similarly, the left shift operator. The left shift operator basically shifts by the number of bits given here left, right? So 4 left shift 1 would become shifts number of bits left, right? So it becomes 100 becomes 1000. That's nothing but 8. Now, one thing to note here is when you do right shift, what is the value that will be replaced by the leftmost position at the leftmost position? It actually depends on what is the value we have in the leftmost position earlier, right? So if the value was 1, it's going to replace all the positions by all the empty positions by 1, whereas in the left shift operator, it's always going to replace all the right values, right empty values by 0. Okay. Similarly, we've got unsigned right shift operator, which acts same as the right shift operator, but the only difference is all the empty positions will be replaced by 0 in the right shift unsigned right shift operator, whereas in the normal right shift operator, if the value is 1 on the leftmost position, it's going to replace everything, all the empty elements spaces by 1, and if the value of the leftmost position is 0, it's going to replace all the empty spaces by 0, right? But here you would have got a question that the leftmost position is 1 and not 0, right? And why it has actually replaced the leftmost position, empty position by 0 and not 1 here. So the answer to that is this is not actually the complete byte representation of that number 4, right? So I've just taken the last 3 digits, but the digits, the bits before this, there are a number of bits before these 3 bits, right? And all those would be 0. So hence it's 0 here and not 1, right? So that's about operators.